Welcome to our space where talking about the inspiring things with inspiring people is what inspires us. Waiting for you here are the infinite possibilities that creation, collaboration, and connection have to offer. A universe where we see everything through rose-tinted spectacles that help us to keep our faith in the power of imagination alive and well. And now, let's talk. Welcome everyone to this episode of Metralla Rosa. Today I'm super happy, very pleased, because we have an actor, a writer, director for theater and screen, Tonderai Munyevu. He was born in Zimbabwe but raised in London and is an out-of-the-box thinker. Someone that I'm really excited to have you here because we know it's going to be super interesting. But he is also the creator of a company, a theater company that explores migration, and displacement through classical theater, to Jen's production. And that makes me very, very happy because this program is basically about the diaspora, yes, a little bit, to look at the world through many languages and from very different perspectives, to create bridges instead of separation, yes, let's say. So thank you so much. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled. I'm just, excited to be here.
I don't know if I should be asking you first about your childhood or about Tujen's production, but I feel very tempted to go with a classical chronology of things, and ask you, what do you remember about the Zimbabwe you had the opportunity to experience as a child? Is it there? Is it very present in you?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you talk about diaspora, and I always think that people who've grown up somewhere else to where they were born, they live in the memory of the first place. You know, you're judging everything against that initial thing. So I moved to London when I was 12, and I think
you were big enough.
I was big enough, yeah. And in fact, I think that I was very, very lucky growing up because my grandmother, who has passed away this year, she passed away, she was 90 something.
Wow. Yeah. I saw a photo in your Instagram.
Yes.
And she survived your dad.
She survived no. She's my mother's mother.
Okay,
yes.
Okay. But that
my mother is happily with us. But my grandmother, I was very lucky because my mother was very business minded. So she often had to travel, and often we had to go in Zimbabwe, the holidays. You have 3 holidays a year, and each of them are a month. So you do 3 months at school, and then you get a month of holiday, and then you do another 3 months. So that's how it's arranged. And so in 3 months of the year, I would spend with my grandmother.
Okay.
And I spoke Shona with her, and I learned so much of the time that she remembered. She was born in 1925 or something. So there was so much that she remembered from then that she taught us, and we lived with her on the homestead, and I went with the boys to head the cows, and I went with my grandmother to her garden, and we used the well. And there's a lot of those memories that I really, really, really remember and I cherish. And I think they crystallize because you've moved away from them, and you a part of you, I think, as a diasporian, you remember it, and then you capture it, and then you keep it in a pristine memory in a way. So I live with that very, 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 very beautifully. And whenever I started writing, there was a lot of recalling of that. And then part of my childhood was spent with my father in the townships. There's a high density black areas, working class.
Rural, more rural?
No, my grandmother was more rural. The townships were more like, the word ghetto kind of gives you the idea, but we don't call them ghettos there because they're really nice little houses, but quite a lot of them. And everybody works, everybody's a nurse or a teacher or whatever, but they're really intense and working class and fantastically dense. And then my mother was a bit more shishy, so I lived in the suburbs with her. and she had white friends and
Shishi in itself as a word sounds a little bit more
She was very much like that, beautifully dressed and exquisitely ambitious and really, really fascinating as a woman. So I spent, I went between those three very distinct spheres. And then I went to a missionary boarding school in my last year in Zimbabwe. So that was Catholicism and learning and being on the mountains and removed from everybody. So it was a very beautiful childhood, and I have fantastic memories from it. And I write, always when I'm writing, something of that time comes through.
And as a human being, do you think, especially if you are a creative, especially if you like writing or working with your emotions to create characters, belonging to something that you need to, that you know what it is, but nobody around you really knows, and you feel that you need to explain somehow, makes you more tridimensional or more deeper somehow, or there's a sense of nostalgic wisdom. I don't know what
I think what it is that you are, people are bilingual. You're bilingual.
Yes, well, I'm trilingual because my mom was an immigrant from Italy.
Oh wow.
And
so you've got Italy and Spanish and English.
Spanish and English.
That's fantastic. And I love your English because it's very English, but it also has sentence structures that are
totally Latin.
Yes.
Yes.
And so it makes you very exciting to listen to you because
thank you.
You're perfectly fluent. I'm not suggesting you're not, but there's a structural thing that's
exciting.
Can be clumsy,
that's but coming, at the same time
not
playful,
even clumsy,
playful.
But just classical, like you said, like coming from that other tradition. So I feel like I'm bilingual because I speak Shona in English, but I'm also bicultural. So that I have a traditional Zimbabwean concept of life with the whole religious affiliation to that, indigenous Shona religion around Mwari, who's our god, and the ancestors and how they intersect and what that means. And then I have an entirely European outlook. I'm a gay man in London, and I'm not necessarily religious anymore, but that's a big
we will talk about that.
Yes.
Don't worry.
So I'm not an atheist,
you
but
won't survive.
I'm a rationalist. So
I
have my culture is twice. So I'm always looking at things in more than the simplest way. And I think, like your sentence structures, I think that for people enjoying my work, it's because it has an otherness to it, but it's somehow entirely familiar.
Exactly.
So I think that's the joy of the position I exist in.
And probably also for you, coming from Zimbabwe, being in a school, a boarding school, and then for you to incorporate to this kind of from European center point of view, more cosmopolitan society, was very easy, I guess.
Initially it wasn't, because I came into a very working class area in London called Housden, which is northwest London, and went to a boys' school in this very urban environment. It was tremendously ugly.
Okay.
Coming from Zimbabwe, where it was incredibly beautiful and incredibly natural and proud. We're very proud people, very clean and very well presented. So coming into a very harsh and grey, urban, dark, dingy London was very upsetting, actually. Initially it wasn't, because I arrived on the 16th of December in 1996 and the snow was out, and we were driving from Gatwick Airport with my mother, because my mother had been living here 3 years prior to that. Driving in and seeing everything was just extraordinary, of course, because...
she came first.
She came first. And I stayed with my dad and my grandmother, and so I was at boarding school. So that was initially very beautiful. And then the summer comes, as you know, in London, the summer comes, and then you see how tremendously dirty it is.
Yes. You are also happy, but you can see all the,
Oh my God, it's filthy, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the sun just undoes London. If you're not in central London, the rest of London's quite tricky. So no, I didn't like it at first, and I was really bullied because I didn't know what gay was, but everybody said I was gay. Of course, they were accurate, but I had no idea what they were talking about. It never even occurred to me, because it wasn't a cultural thing we talked about. Although one knew that one was different in some ways. So it was very, very tricky. I mean, I went through my high school years were very tricky.
And you still decided to go to the university and to study theology,
Yeah.
which is fascinating.
Everybody likes that.
I love it. Anyone that has a little interest for philosophy or psychology or history, of course, is going to be fascinated about theology.
Yeah.
And also, they say that this is the best way to lose your own faith.
Yes, it's the quickest way, I think.
Did it happen to you?
Very quickly.
You came here as a Catholic?
I came here as a Catholic because I went to a Catholic boarding school, and the priests were just very enchanting to me. I liked the whole setup. I was really taken by it. I thought, there was obviously always something in me around
ceremony?
Around ceremony and performance and maybe in a position.
Yes.
So I think for me, that was the version I got. Other people get Al Pacino on the TV and theater at Panto or whatever. I saw the priests.
Yeah.
And that was what
I need to say this. I come from my mom was an atheist.
Yeah.
But Italian. So there's no way to be really an atheist.
There's too much culture in Italy for you to not believe in God.
But I wasn't raised Catholic, but I went to a Catholic school because it was the only one bilingual. I could learn Italian very well, and it was a good school. And I remember when I was 25, I took my niece to the church for first time for her.
Yeah.
And after the ceremony, she said to me, I loved this theater. It was amazing. And I saw it for first time from that perspective that you were probably fascinated by.
It's ritual and it's tradition, and it's a lot also that's parallel to some Shona cultural things. But it's incredibly evolved ritual that I think is very fulfilling, actually. I mean, Catholics are very, very lucky because you have your confession, you have all these things that are...
The dichotomy from good and bad was attractive?
Yes, good and bad, but also that you can absolve some of that badness. So if you've really done something terrible, actually a few Hail Marys and you're back on track. How extraordinary is that?
A few pounds and that
just
really helped.
Put some money in there, smell the incense, and you're better, and you feel better. And there is... what I find interesting about the Reformation when Martin Luther criticized the church, the Catholic Church in the 16th century, and said, actually, this is not working. It's because people were taking this idea that you can solve your problems by buying a relic of someone or by paying for this, or by, it became an absolute business. But that because the psychology around it was that if you do this, you're good.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I think it's really powerful, and Catholics are very lucky to have that, because it also has some limitations nowadays. I think some of the problems we're having in Zimbabwe and across Africa is the Pentecostal church that's saying to
South
people...
America, it's the same is happening.
It's global, and it's sadly coming from Middle America as well.
Yeah.
They're spending a lot of money to tell poor working class, actually not even working class, very, very poor Black people in Africa, in Zimbabwe, that they need to give money and that they deserve the pain that they have because they're somehow immoral. And I love that Catholicism doesn't actually do that. I think there is a safety within that church that that nowadays you're not getting with some of this. Anyway, we're digressing on the church.
But I think they have a sense of community very strong because somehow they connect with the people that needs that connection.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think Catholicism, one of the things that I loved was it had a sense in which you could aspire to also a life that was calm and healthy and good. You don't have to do extreme things in Catholicism.
Do you identify these days as a Catholic?
I think I'm always going to be a Catholic. I think that's just a part of the situation. And I was really indoctrinated early on that the Catholic Church was the only church. That's central to the Catholic belief that actually this is a church that was founded on the rock of St. Peter, and everything else that's come is not as true as this one. So I don't know how many Catholics can move away from that and then go and become Jehovah's Witnesses or other churches.
But it sounds very irrational coming from a very rational
person.
Man.
Yeah, but that is, this is how I think that diasporian spirit, right,
yeah.
is also present in my spiritual life, because I've had initially my grandmother who would take me to a witch doctor if there was something wrong, and we would do some ceremonies from the Shona tradition into the Catholic Church, into studying theology, and absolutely, I was taking my top off and dancing on tabletops within 3 weeks of starting my theology degree. I certainly was not going to church 6 weeks after starting, and it just went. I needed permission to let go, and then I did, yeah.
And you did. So that was the time when you started being interested in becoming an actor and writing and plays.
And plays. I think I always was interested, but I didn't know that was something that you could do. You could do, not really. And my mother, of course, was a migrant mother, so she was like, "You're going to university.
Yeah, and you are going to do well."
Yes. I've not sacrificed all of this for you to go off and be. But when I finished my degree, I gave my mother at the ceremony, with my gown and everything. I gave my mother the certificate after I took it from the chancellor and gave it to her, and I said, "There you go. I'm done. This portion of my life where I'm doing it for you is done." And because I knew it was very important for her to have us make it to degree level. It was something that was a point of pride for her.
But I'm sure it was also wonderful for you, because you are the kind of person that I can easily see going through an academic process and enjoy it.
Oh, I loved it. I loved it. I only wish, and I sometimes dream that I'm back at university. I only wish I had known that I was going to be okay, so that I would have enjoyed it a lot more.
Okay.
I think I was anxious around whether or not I was going to make it.
Yeah.
And I think that now that
You have some regrets now.
I could have just concentrated a bit more.
And I was very surprised that when you wrote a piece saying that it was actually during these studies that you came very close to the Shona culture, because you have learned there things you didn't know about your own culture.
So I showed up.
How is that possible?
Well, because when you're doing a degree in theology in particular, and I did it at King's College in London, which is, how lucky am I? One of the best universities.
A dream place to do theology.
The second best place in the world to do theology, which I had no idea, of course, back then. Only Cambridge was better back then. I don't know what the league tables are now, but I was very proud to be there. But one of the things that was great about that is that they really gave you a comprehensive view. So you had some things you had to do. So you had to learn about the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible. You had to do sociology of religion. You had to do the New Testament. You had to do all these really things that are the basis of theology. But then you also got to do other things. You got to do different types of philosophy, which was a subject I enjoyed very much. But you also got to do African religions. And of course, I saw it on
those are elective subjects.
Elective subjects. So I picked African religions, which was the most popular class at King's College.
It
was taught by the most extraordinary man.
I would have done that.
Oh my God. It was just fantastic. The Inca tribe, this tribe from wherever, you're looking at all this, and there's some fantastic case studies done in all of these places. And then one day they were doing the Shona people of Zimbabwe. I was like, oh my God. And then got to learn about the religion almost from the outside. The things that my grandmother had told me were from that perspective of living it. But this was from the perspective of observing it. And it was, one of the most beautiful things I think I've experienced. I was so full of...
Could you relate from...
I could relate
2 ways
from what my grandmother had said, but I think they were looking at it more around, okay, so their God is Mwari, whereas to us it's just Mwari. We don't think it's a God called Mwari because we don't have the concepts of gods. Mwari is just Mwari.
Okay. Even better.
You wouldn't call, but if you're studying it, you need a language, you need a parallel.
Yeah.
You need to put what you're observing within a European framework, within a European language set. So there was something about that was it made it a little bit clearer, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Because I found in my childhood that it was very immersive.
Yes, yes.
Know.
You couldn't take distance.
You couldn't take distance. You couldn't look at it. And sometimes, looking at the beginnings of the church, what they say the church, which is that rock that St. Peter laid the church on. If you're a Catholic, you're really just thinking of your church as having this long history down to that rock. But actually, if you're studying it, you're actually seeing that Catholicism is a concept that emerged at some point, a couple, 3, 4 centuries later, then we have a concept of it. But that's only because you're really looking at it. And then if you're really looking at sociology of religion, why do people need religion? What is the role of religion?
Mm-hmm.
Religion is a social glue and all of that stuff. It really allows you to read. It's the history of religion. I mean,
mm-hmm.
nothing is more
and
powerful
you
than
reread
that.
the things that you believe.
Yes.
Somehow.
And you see why you would want to believe them.
Exactly.
Which is also very
contradictory and complex, but it's fascinating.
Absolutely. And I'm very lucky. I mean, I'm very lucky to have had the 3 years to reflect upon such serious
Have you ever
things.
write something where you explore a little bit these things, especially
the first play I wrote?
Shona culture?
Oh yes, I mean, I think the Shona thing is coming one day, like just a Shona thing.
It's gonna happen.
It's gonna happen.
Please.
But I think I've written, I think in all my pieces, there is always, I think, a search for a kind of a spiritual understanding. By that I don't mean that I'm talking about God or religion, but I think I'm talking about the human spirit, the thing that is in all of us that we're working through and why we're working through it. My first play was really about...
Which one?
It wasn't published, we never performed. It's called Kanjani, and it was about a father who tries to come back after he's dead. But his son is being gay and fabulous in London and he doesn't want to know. I have to rewrite it because it was too big and too many things were happening.
Was it a big deal for you, your family, your relationship with your father was complicated because you were gay?
Not because I was gay, no.
No.
I think he knew from very early
very
on.
wise man.
I'm afraid he wasn't. I was just that gay. No, I mean everybody
knew.
We didn't call it gay, but I had an unmarried uncle, and his name was Zephy, and he was very well dressed and very spiritual. And when I was younger, they called me Zephy, little Zephy. That was the first kind of thing that they thought.
Your archetype. They identify your archetype.
They saw that. But also, I'm writing a little bit about this in a book I'm working on. That spirituality and that gayness was somewhat connected.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
Because it was the two male and the female energy.
And I think also... when you go through life with so much fight, you become very, very spiritual because there's no other way. Yes. You connect somehow with things that others can't.
Yeah, that's
because
very profound.
Yeah.
Thank you. No, but that's exactly it. But I mean, our gay culture, I think there's a lot to be criticized around the gay culture that we have in Europe because sometimes it doesn't allow for people to really look in the interior. That's not to say being a gay thing is something that you need to overcome, not at all. But that we have to live lives. Just because we're gay doesn't mean you sign up to a set of ideals and you follow them. You don't have to follow any ideal because you're gay. Mm-hmm. That's just as limiting as... do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Totally. So if you're gay, it doesn't mean that you follow... I think my family always think gayness is like Sir Elton John. you know. So they
Yeah,
think you wear sparkly things, you're creative and artistic.
it could happen.
You have a temperament.
But it doesn't have to be like that.
My mother's like, you're like Sir Elton John, or Boy George was another person she was obsessed with, and so they there was always an effort to try and describe me, and but I think I was gay, and they were very. It hasn't been a problem.
And are African cultures as binary as we see it from outside? Because sometimes we also have so many stereotypes.
Yes.
And you tend to see, the role of a female and the role of a male in African cultures very strong and very strong, I would say.
Yes, very clear.
Clear.
Well, Zimbabwe, which is what I can speak with more confidence about, because Africa is such a different. Yeah. But in Zimbabwe,
was an ambitious question.
Yeah, very ambitious. But you are ambitious.
I know.
I'm failing your ambition.
It can also be very lack of depth, because you need to understand that a whole continent is not.
But I know you know that. It's just that I sometimes say that too. And I think that it's important to always remind ourselves, because you're part of the family in that way. I wouldn't look at you as a European person with no respect for African culture. There's something about you I assume would want to have respect for the culture. But it's different. I don't think it's drastically different between countries. So I think there is an African concept which you can safely say around perhaps the way that societies are arranged, around the spirituality and the indigenous and the connection between, I think, land and the heavens, if you like. So there are some clear things, but I think in Zimbabwe there are very clear lines around men and women, partly because the roles were always so different. But there's been a lot of work done, I think, in the last century, where women have, whenever they have been given an opportunity, have really taken it and run and redefined themselves and somehow managed to, in Zimbabwe, we've had some very powerful political figures who are women, which was never a thing. I don't think there was a problem that they were women, for example.
Well, I can easily see, I'm going to come back to that African concept that I know is wrong because it's too big, because I don't know specifically each country. I prefer to use African. But in general, Black women are so strong and so easy take leadership of situations. Especially if there's something to solve or someone is not having an easy time, they come.
It's a practical energy.
They very helpful.
Yeah.
And
those are the women I grew up with. My mother and my grandmother, who were just incredible. Like I literally,
good administrators, good
leaders, good powerful leaders, and very capable of really making difficult decisions. That's one thing I think my grandmother was a difficult woman. Extremely difficult. But she had a clarity of thought, and she could follow it through, and I think that's really remarkable. And I wonder, it would take me some age to be able to contextualize the meaning of her meaning in my life. But I think there's something about that extraordinary individualism that she had, which my mother also has. My mother is less difficult than my grandmother.
Okay.
But she's still mother.
I'm happy to hear that.
She's still very individual and powerful.
And before lockdown, because we cannot avoid the fact that we are just coming kind of out of a very long quarantine. That wasn't really a quarantine, more like 100 days. You were playing The Claim.
I was performing the play The Claim.
You were performing.
It was this year. It feels like
It feels like it was a year ago.
It feels like it was years ago. But we're doing the play.
So you were very busy, and then suddenly, whoop.
And then suddenly at home with my partner.
How has been that?
Well, the first 3 weeks I just took to the drink. I just took to the bottle. We just
I'm not gonna say anything.
we just drank because we
Anyway,
were
do
like,
with what they
wow,
could, yeah.
what is going on? And also coming from when lockdown happened, we literally came into lockdown from Rio, which had been very exciting, you know. But
So you were performing in London.
so I was performing the play in London, and then we went to Sao Paulo for a week
With the
of
same
performance
play?
with the same
With the
play,
same play.
which was wonderful. you
Yes,
know.
I think it's
Yeah.
about the system of asylum
The
seekers.
system of asylum seekers, and this interview that they have. It was written by Tim Cowbray, who's a fantastic writer, directed by Mark Morn. It had a wonderful actress called Indra Ove in it, and a wonderful gentleman called Nick Blakely.
It's
Three of us
Three of you.
performing it. And it's always nice for me to not write and not direct something and just perform. That's always
And this was the second season of that play, and the time before
Yes.
was another actor. Is
the
that
time before
correct?
was another actor, although I had workshopped it. I'd been 4 years of developing
Okay.
the play. I'd been there.
Okay,
And
so
then there was a
good,
scheduling
so
problem. When they finally were ready to go, I was busy doing something else. But that's really what acting is. Schedules are such a big thing, you know. But so when it came round again, I just thought this is fantastic.
Wow.
And when I heard about Brazil, I said,
needed to
I'm
be-
definitely there. So when lockdown happened, we had finished the show in Sao Paulo. We were now just having a week in Rio, you know, staying in a fabulous hotel. And we were having the best time ever. And then everything started shutting down. And then we're in the pool of our fabulous hotel
in Copacabana.
on the Copacabana.
Wow.
I forget the name of it, but it's really exquisite. You must stay there.
I think I know the hotel, but I haven't been there.
It's
but
beautiful.
Just
It's the one with this. It's a
Visiting.
very, very beautiful hotel. And we are in the rooftop pool, and then this woman comes and says, "I'm sorry, you have to leave the pool. The mayor shut down all public pools." I almost sort of choked on my champagne. I said, "Where do you go?" I'm in Brazil. So I had to make all the way down to our room to try and figure out how
was
we were going to
happening?
get home, because of course all the flights were fully booked. You know,
or cancelled.
cancelled, and you're really like, oh my god, I love Brazil, but I want to be.
I don't want to live
be
here.
home. You know,
Exactly.
and supposing I catch this virus and I'm not home, what? So it was a very frightening time. So we flew back and just immediately went into lockdown, and it was very difficult. So I just drank too much until one day I woke up and said, actually, I've got so much to do, and then I've just been writing.
I'm sure you just needed that time to
I needed
write.
the 3 weeks to drink.
Okay, first.
And then I've
Because
been writing
Brazil wasn't
nonstop.
enough. So
No,
we needed
no.
a little bit
A little
longer.
bit Listen, it went down. But I'm very lucky.
And you are writing at the moment.
I've been writing so much, it's ridiculous. And I think every idea I've ever had,
I
I've
love
been
that.
able to write. Yeah.
So it's been productive
been
after the
extremely-
initial step.
After the initial
One step
bridge,
that I needed.
that bridge, I have a beautiful garden. So we've been doing the garden and we've been doing the house up. And I'm writing a novel. A series of novels. So I'm writing the first one. I'm writing a play. I'm writing a couple of TV ideas.
Wow.
An opera, which
I'm
is
jealous.
very exciting.
How much?
Yeah, really good opera that I'm working
Lots.
on. Loads and loads. I've got
Lots.
loads of ideas. And it's been great because I write and act and direct. And obviously when you do those things, you have to produce them. You're not
Yes.
just getting a check, you have to find the money. So what's been wonderful is to not act and to not direct, because nobody's acting or directing at the moment. And then just to focus on the writing and to really be at home the whole day, being able to write. I've really welcomed, retrospectively, obviously, it was very frightening at the time, but I really, really think that this has been a great opportunity to redefine
Yes.
and to focus. And, one of the things that has come through this period for me is that I really, really, really want my work to mean something.
Mm-hmm.
Before, I think I was taking the jobs
Mhm.
because I think I wanted to be successful. Now, to be seen, to be.
Part
It's
of
interesting
something.
that part of something, but it's interesting that the Black Lives Matter resurgence has happened also because I realized how much I wanted white people to approve of my work.
Okay.
Isn't that sad?
It is. It
Yeah.
is.
I
But
wanted to be at the National Theatre. I wanted to be at the RSC. I wanted to be in all of these things because I thought that those were the markers that made the work great. And I can't tell you how differently I feel about it now. I really, 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 really want to have my work mean something.
Mhm.
For it to, I want to meet my audience. I want them to know that I think about the things that are deeper than what they've traditionally been given. You know, I don't want to tell, nothing wrong with these stories, but I don't want to tell stories about the council estate or whatever
I
else.
know,
And when I talk about Africa, I don't want to talk about the problems in Africa. I want to talk about the spiritual awakening, the intellectual awakening that has always been a part of the African journey, particularly now, because social media is really redefining how young African people
see themselves.
are seeing themselves and seeing the world, and they're fighting for that. So I just want to meet them, as Toni Morrison said, you know, I want to meet my audience at the place of elevation, not at that place of basic representation.
Is it scary that maybe because you are aiming such a high
Yes.
prize, you maybe have to, in the meantime, not having the success you were having?
Yes, but that wasn't really the success that I remember auditioning for this piece of work, which was terrible, and I really wanted to be in it. I mean, it was terrible.
It was it really?
And I went to see it, and it was terrible.
Yeah.
But I really wanted to be in it. And I thought, but why would you want to be a part of that?
And you weren't at the end because wise is wiser than you.
Well, the director probably knows that I was too good for it.
It wasn't your place.
Yeah,
probably.
Because I shouldn't be existing in those empty spaces. Going back to that thing about my uncle Zephy, he was spiritual, and I think that everything that who I am is highly sieved through to the point where I can't deny to myself who I really am. I mean, I'm a serious person, you know.
We do it many times. I remember, I can relate so much to that feeling of wanting something it's not for you, and it's not gonna make you happy, and you still want it so much, and other people tell you because you would have never done that thing, right? And I'm like, I actually wanted it like crazy.
I was dying for it.
Others can always see you. It's you who sometimes ridiculous? Don't see yourself.
Isn't that ridiculous? That's so true.
Yeah.
That it's, you can see your best friend better than your best friend can see themselves.
Totally, yes. And then they think it's this challenge, and you are taking decisions, and it's just that they are not taking me on board.
Yeah, absolutely. But you look, at this point I was doing an essay for my play, which is getting published soon.
Which one?
The Moors, which I did 2 years ago. We're finally getting it published for 16 to 18-year-old kids, really. But I was writing this essay to go along with it. And I thought, oh God, I'm writing it too high, you know? And then my partner read it, and he said, no, I think it's you, and also it is true. And isn't that funny that the highness that we're referring to is a certain kind of truth that we don't want to say unless we think that it's being said in a grave way to older people. It's like, no, let the 16-year-old hear where I'm coming from.
And also,
on that high level.
Don't subestimate ever the intelligence of others, because they probably will connect very truthfully.
And just because someone is young doesn't mean they won't get it.
Exactly.
That's what so I'm really, 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 I really want to say something now. It's so funny to say I'm 37. I'm like, I really want to say something now. I understand completely why I was trying to do all the things that I was trying to do before, but I think I get it now.
Okay.
And I'm free now.
And is it, now that you are talking like this, is it frustrating when, as a actor, you somehow, I understand, a blonde actor cannot do a role that is meant to be for a black guy.
Yes. Although they do.
I don't know. And it should work also
The other way.
the other way around.
Yes.
But do you feel as a Black actor that you are limited? Your options are more limited?
Yes. Well, the stories are very limited. When I graduated from acting school 12 years ago, and in the first year or two, part of my way of working then, not necessarily now, was you look at the character, you make a little history for yourself of the character, and then you do the bit. So you think about what's happened to this character all the way from when they were born. And I think about 3 years into my career, I found that the background I was creating was the same, because all the work that I was doing, I was a slave, or I was part of a civil war in Rwanda, or I was some guy in apartheid South Africa, or so the thing that linked every character I
Was more or
was
less the same
playing
story.
was the story of trauma and the story of pain. And I'm funny,
Yes, you are.
so I
I'm happy and playful.
I'm happy and playful.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm serious, but one of the skills I have as an actor is my comedy skills, and one didn't have them. You didn't get to play them, so it's also the stories. I don't mind playing a Black character. I love it. I'm a Black man, and I don't want. Some actors say they want to see a role that they don't want to think about whether it's for a Black person. They want to play just the character. I want to play Black people. So I think Black people are really, we are very good people.
Yes. Why not? But also I understand when someone feels frustrated because they would like to just play a character. It doesn't need to be a Black person.
But I like Black characters. I like African characters. I just would like...
more variety.
Yes, I would like a political drama in which nobody gets killed. People just argue politically and they move on.
Is that why you have created your own company?
Yes.
Two Gens Production is somehow an answer to that dilemma.
It has become that over the years. I think initially we were just playing with Shakespeare because Arna Pomayo, who was a co-artistic director with me, he came to me and another actor called Denton Chikura with the idea of doing two-man versions of Shakespearean work. And initially it was just about getting work and making work, and then as it's evolved, it's become something really profound. And often now I think, especially during the quarantine, I think we've had so many conversations, Anna and I, about what we should do and whether Shakespeare is the right thing at this time and what does it mean to be Black Lives Matter, and using Shakespeare, surely that's sort of mutually exclusive. But actually what we really, really, really care about is that whoever gets to work in the company or tells these stories, that they bring their own histories to it and they bring what they care about into the work. So I care about obviously a range of different things, from spirituality to sexuality to gender to comedy to whatever, and I bring that. Somebody else might bring an entirely different thing. And so now our job is now to facilitate, especially young people under 25, to see where they can get these skills to create for themselves. They take Hamlet and they make it their own Hamlet. So now it's no longer about going to the Globe or going to the National. It's about you and your work and your audience that relate and know you, and you can have that conversation for yourselves. And I'm sure that the National and the RSC and all these big companies, they will gravitate towards that because that's truthful and honest. So we want to partner obviously with those big theaters, but actually the first and foremost, asking ourselves the question, what is this about? And it's really about the performers telling their stories, getting the skill to write, getting to devise, getting to do it. Because, it's brought me a lot of power and a lot of self-respect. And, I'm one of those people, I can wake up in the morning and decide what I want to do. And then 2 years down the line, it's happening in a theater.
And that's wonderful.
That's power.
Wonderful. It's powerful. Yes, it is. It is. So you are still very active and proactive with the company.
Yes.
And
yes.
It has become more than Shakespeare, right? It was, I'm not saying more because Shakespeare isn't enough, because we all know that only Shakespeare would be enough for three lives.
Yeah.
But I saw a play that was...
I think you saw The Importance of Being Earnest.
The Importance of Being Earnest,
with two Black women.
Amazing.
So it's no longer about me being in it. it's now about me helping other people.
It was a wonderful
It was a
play. Yes,
beautiful,
it was
beautiful
beautifully
show.
acted and
Yeah,
very,
yeah.
very, very funny, very
Very
easy
funny.
to see, but also very deep.
Very deep,
And
very profound.
Yes, yes. It
And
was.
the two women are obviously good friends of mine, especially now that we've gone through that process, and they really shifted through that
After that
process.
experience.
Yeah. And so that's what the work is about now.
And you did a Hamlet that I think you had the opportunity to take to Africa,
Yes,
to Zimbabwe,
to
and
Zimbabwe.
other Southern
And
Africa
I think,
countries.
yes, I think we went to South Africa.
How
as well.
was the audience in front of
You know, it's
this
so funny because
opportunity?
in Zimbabwe, we performed at a festival, so it was like performing in London. White people came, you know, because they go to festivals.
Yes,
so,
yes.
So it was it was very similar in that regard. But performing
Was
it
that
elsewhere,
frustrating?
at that time we were just so pleased to be home, and the festival that we're performing at was what made it possible to go. So you can't really be angry.
Yeah, you
that,
can't.
That people
You can
are excited.
complain.
You can't complain.
You can't complain.
And also, it made me wonder whether, because we once did a show in a township in Zimbabwe, because we were performing at the festival, and we said, actually, let's go to the people. You know, we want the people to see it.
Okay.
And we were advised that it shouldn't be free because people have no respect for free things. You have to charge something. So we said, okay, let's charge $1. You know, and that's all great. And people came, and we were performing the show, which is a very beautiful show and everything. But they were really, really bored.
Really?
They couldn't connect with it. And that was so stunning because I thought, for all the work we've done to make Shakespeare Zimbabwean and African,
yeah.
they don't get it because it had nothing to do with them. You know, it was really, 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 really funny. So we started changing it. So we stopped. The text became less and less Shakespearean. So we just started improvising
And
in
that was
modern
better?
English.
That was
That
better?
was slightly better, but I mean, we had lost them at that stage. And then we finished, and then there was a movie that came on, and people were so engaged with the movie.
With the movie.
So that also taught me that theatre as a European concept of you sit down nice and quiet,
Yeah.
and you watch, and you don't talk about it.
Where you are watching.
You know, you just sit and that doesn't work for people in Zimbabwe. It absolutely does not work. They want to be engaged. They want to be a part of it.
So maybe little pieces, micro pieces. Would
but
work
also
better.
telling stories that reflect the audience. I mean, as two Black performers who are Zimbabwean who have trained in England, who are bringing, on a sensible English playwright to Zimbabwe, there's a loop there that's happened that's actually highly problematic, because we're saying you should watch this, which we've made as a reaction to being Black somewhere else.
Yeah.
And they're like, but we are not those people.
And we don't connect with those.
But you know why?
conflicts.
Because we were making the show for white people. We were saying to white people, this is your playwright. We're going to show you how he would be to us.
Yeah.
And that's the wrong intention for a Zimbabwean audience. Isn't that staggering?
Maybe it's a wrong intention in itself.
Yes.
Not just for a Zimbabwean
Yes.
audience. Because
Yeah.
as a starting point, maybe it's not
wrong.
not the right.
But like, listen, the quarantine again has made that very clear.
Before the quarantine, were you able to be so critical about that?
No.
Okay, so when you had the experience, in the moment that the experience was happening, were you that critical? No.
No, I was angry that we misfired. So
But it's an amazing
Yeah.
thing to be able to see
Yeah.
yourself as you were seeing somewhere else, because it makes all the possibilities of really growing out of the experience expand.
Absolutely. But I think, look, I was trying to get
Too
something.
hard.
I was trying to get white people the white industry to
Like you.
to give me a position. I wanted to be like Simon Russell Bill or Mark Rylance or whoever. I mean, that's what I sort of came through drama school admiring. And now, I mean, I don't admire anyone really in that way. Now I just think, what can I really do that's really going to be, the best intention for now. But also what's going to be really, really interesting for me, what do I want? I mean, the play that I'm working on now is really, a play that the intention with the play, and unashamedly so, the intention of the play is to heal and to calm and to bring sweetness to Black people's lives.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, that's the intention of this Black piece of work that I'm creating.
Let's talk about Black Lives Matter, and there was also a Black Zimbabwean Lives Matter, or Zimbabwean Lives Matter, very recently, because of the brutality with police that happened during the coronavirus over there.
Yeah.
How did you engage with those?
I haven't engaged with the Zimbabwean Lives Matter thing, but I'm trying to read as much about it as possible. And to talk to my family about it, and there are a few people who I follow on Twitter. It's funny because I've just read Nervous Condition, which is a very famous novel by a Zimbabwean woman. It was published in the 80s. And she's just published the follow-up to that, called This Mournable Body, which has just been nominated for a Booker Prize.
Wow.
So she's really extraordinary. But she's one of the people who were arrested. So I'm really looking at her and seeing what I can do to support her. Because that's definitely a person that's out there. And then I have some lawyer friends who have been doing good work on the ground for a very long time.
When you say, how can I help, what do you mean? What is for you real action? You that are not naive.
Yes. Well, that's the thing, because one of the reasons why I can't really comment about Zimbabwean Lives Matter unless to say we're supporting anybody who's being active against injustice. Is that, what do I do? I send a tweet, or, what is the real...
What's a real way to help?
But I think that the real thing is the enlightenment of enough people in Zimbabwe. It's really, really sad, because I'm supposed to be touring this play. My play got cancelled, Mugabe, My Dad and Me. And that is a story about Zimbabwe through Mr. Mugabe and through my father, who died as a destitute person, and myself as a migrant Zimbabwean. And we ended that show. We haven't rehearsed it yet, but I finished writing it with the idea that Mr. Mnangagwa...
Is this the one you are writing?
No, this is the one I should be performing now. I'm writing another one now.
Okay.
Because I can't, that was ready for rehearsal, so I can't keep writing it. You keep writing, you fuck it up. So I stopped writing it until rehearsal, then I'll write some more bits into it. But we ended that with the last notes of that play is saying that actually Mr. Mnangagwa was taken over after Mr. Mugabe died and was disposed, but the system is the same. So what does it mean? And actually what's sad is that prediction in the play, which we finished writing in January, February for rehearsals in March, that what we suspected was going to happen is now happening.
Wow.
Because the system that gave us Mr. Mugabe is the same system that's giving us Mr. Mnangagwa, In fact, Mr. Mugabe and Mr. Mnangagwa were rivals and contemporaries, and there was some infighting which caused Mr. Mugabe to be disposed. It wasn't because the people had made a decision to dispose a dictator. So actually we're in the same system. And these tricks of arrest and people being stopped from seeking justice, this is a long tradition that's 30, 40 years old. So it's 40 years of independence. This is what we've lived with. So it's more of the same.
And when you went there after the death of your dad, but that was also the death of Mugabe.
Yes.
Where could you sense desire for change? Could you sense hope in the atmosphere? How was to be there at that time, and how did it change you?
I mean, there was a hope, but I just thought, well, how can the system is the same.
But now you think that, but back
no, I felt that then.
How, did
yes,
you feel that?
I felt that then. But Zimbabwe, it's so precious to me. I haven't been there for maybe almost 2 years, which is the longest I haven't been there for a while, because I tried to go there. My mother moved back to Zimbabwe, so I tried to go there as often as possible for her, but also to be with the people there, and also to enjoy the intelligence of my friends who are there, the life, the sweetness of life there. And you know what really, really inspires me is the people there on the ground, because whenever I go to Zimbabwe, invariably, something has changed. So the currency is now this, and this is how you exchange it, and this is the calculation you gotta make every time you go into a shop, or you can't go to that area now because that's no longer there. This is what we're doing. There's always a new bar.
The mobility of things in continents like America and Africa is so violent, but also in a good way.
Because it tricks your brain.
Everything. It's much more solid and stable than for years and centuries. But over there, everything changed so much.
Everything changes. And there's a saying, you catch the biggest fish in the murkiest water.
Yeah.
Someone said that to me about Zimbabwe, and I thought, yes, that makes perfect sense. Life is very, very exciting. And things are moving so quick.
And everyone have a project, and everyone is alive.
Everyone has an idea.
Everyone have an idea. Everyone is so alive. Even with all the problems. I would say despite the problems.
Despite the problems. I mean, my mother is 67 and she's just like, she wakes up and she's got to go there.
Fire.
I mean, I was like, oh, wow.
Fire, yeah.
Like in London, you stay in bed all day if you want. Things are the same.
And there's something sometimes when you enter into the system, you become part of it, that puts you down somehow. Even if you try hard to not let that thing, that atmospheric, difficult to name thing, but there's I have come to the conclusion that maybe it's something about the continent we are in.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And it's something like we were saying before we were filming about the sun and how everything's always just right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Zimbabwe is, until there's a major change, which I think will come through the young people in about 20 or 30 years.
Or maybe more.
Because now there's a memory of everything.
Do you think that mainly the biggest problems are all post-colonial times? That is,
I think it's because of
somehow relate to that.
Absolutely, it's because of colonization. Absolutely, but I think also it's the memory of it. Mm-hmm. We spoke earlier
about
and the fact it's in the blood, it's in the water still. So I think that because at the moment, to be in parliament, to be in government, you have to have somehow been part of the war. The war was in the 70s. They're not going to accept anyone who's not a veteran of the war. So we need to get to a point where nobody even remembers the war.
Yeah. To have a clear, fresh, real start.
Because and
even though it's so difficult.
Yeah.
And in Shona culture, the importance of your ancestors
and your age,
it's really strong. I think in general, all the cultures that gave the right place to the right things have a very respectful relationship with the past and with ancestors in general. And with this Black Lives Matter movement, I have felt in the air that speech of I'm here trying to change things, but I also going to do it because somehow my ancestors deserve that and they are supporting me to continue this. Do you see this as a fight, or how do you see this? Or fight is
in Zimbabwe or in general?
In general, because I'm very optimistic about what is happening with that particular matter around the world.
Yeah.
Do you think it's going to be a trend? Do you think it's really coming from from a perspective of change and revolution of the minds? And a new set of ideas and principles and...
Well, I mean, I don't know how much white people are invested in it, because it's really down to white people.
That's what's going to make the change, really.
And I don't mean that every white person walking in the street should say to themselves, it's me, I've got to make a change, because that's also obnoxious in itself, because they don't...
To pretend that.
Well, also just to say it or to act like you're doing it, because it's not true. Because what it actually means is that white people are going to have less, is what they think, right? Mm-hmm. And their relationship with that, I mean, I don't know. But I think what's different is that Black people are now very aware of how much they won't accept. And I think that's what feels different. I don't know if white people are ready to really make all those changes. I think they're forced to, just like everybody was forced to look at women during the Me Too movement. It's just an awareness, and it does change things, and it's very powerful, and it's really important. But I think for me, what I was struck by, apart from everything I've shared around my own process being so drastically different now, I also realized how much trauma I was holding on to and how much I was allowing treatment that I shouldn't have allowed. So now I'm more conscious of a racist person or a racist act, and being able, because I'm not an aggressive person, but I'm very clear. So I think if somebody does something racist, I think I'm able now to say, not to look away and think, okay, that's a racist person.
Yeah, it's just as it is, but fighting through. It's more important.
Yeah.
Or making your voice loud and clear.
Yeah, and also, because to just use a different example, because I'm so gay and so out, people are not homophobic to me.
Yes.
I mean, they probably are behind my back.
Who knows?
I think my grandmother was behind my back.
No, but we care. We care because that's what creates system.
Yeah, but I think when you see someone who becomes a beacon for something, I mean, I'm very clear about being an open gay out person because I'm African and I'm Black, because I know that means something. But people are not homophobic too, It's so funny because sometimes I'm in a cab and someone starts off around these gays. And it's always such a moment because you go, fuck. Okay. I'm gay. Like it's really a thing.
And you have to
be conscious.
Yeah.
And some days I don't because I just want to get to the
cares?
station and get the train. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I feel that way about more Black people being able to say, we are really Black. We are Black people culturally, but that doesn't mean that we're not the same.
And it doesn't mean we are not valid. It doesn't mean we are not beautiful. It doesn't mean we are not powerful.
But that's changed. I mean, funny enough, the Kardashians helped along with that. I mean, that's really, Rihanna, Beyonce.
All those pop
across Africa as well. Beauty standards, South Africans have been, just
every little helps.
Yeah.
And what have you learned along your life from your failures?
I think I've learned everything from my failures. I think that thing you just said about almost the universe saying,
exactly. No,
and
I know you want to go there, but that's not for you.
The universe is going,
regret
that place, shit. You don't want to be in that place for 3 months. What have I learned from my failures? I've had a few. I think that if I don't listen to myself, I mean, this is everybody says this. If I ignore my
your
instinct, I mean, from then on, it's literally going like that. Yeah.
So you are always connected with that inner voice.
No, I'm not. No. But I should be. But I think the thing that happens is a bit like being ostensibly Black. I'm Black obviously, but being also saying I'm Black, or I'm gay or whatever. Is that it automatically means everybody's aware of it and everybody's looking out to help you. And I think now the declaration I have of I want to do good work, that means something, means that hopefully that makes it easier for people who are of that thinking to be around it. But I think I've made some terrible mistakes in terms of wanting fame, wanting more money, wanting position, as opposed to wanting meaning. And I think I've suffered because of that. I think I've had countless sleepless nights because such and such didn't put me in their play, or such and such didn't acknowledge me at a party, or do you know what I mean? Like really basic things that I should know better about, but I didn't. And then professional failures. I think I failed when I haven't stopped something that I knew wasn't ready. And I didn't say, stop. We need another week. Because the financial model means you can't stop it. But for me now, I think finding ways in which you don't allow it to get to that point. You stop before. And I think that I've also failed, I think personally I failed in not being healthier because I haven't realized how much I've committed to. So then sometimes I would drink too much because and I think I'm having fun, but actually I'm really trying to find a quiet space, and that happens in the drink, you know.
Sometimes to overcome the sense of that sense of value that is not really working,
It's
that
not
is not in a
working.
healthy
Yes, because
state.
you're wanting something that
Yeah.
you know somewhere in your heart isn't right. I've definitely felt that way, and I think my commitment to my family has always been really
Flaky?
Flaky.
I don't know why I knew, because I am the same.
because
Sometimes
I-
you need to take distance, but
Yeah.
you never. Then, if you take distance, you never
Yeah.
know when it's time to come
to
back.
come back,
And
we
when you
have to
come back, it's
maintain
never
it.
the same.
It's never the same, and you don't want to hear about something that happened. You want to be somehow there, even if you're not physically there. You're there with a £10 note, or with a long phone call, or with a piece of cloth, or with
Whatever
a
the
pair of
other
earrings,
needs,
whatever.
really. Yeah.
Just that I see you are my kin. You belong to me. So I've really had a look at that as well. So I think that was a failure that I didn't know was actually creating more problems in my life, because I was feeling more distanced. So now I definitely I call my mom for 5 minutes, literally for 5 minutes, because that's all I have. But she loves it.
And
She loves it. I call my brother. I never used to keep in touch with my brother. I call him, and we are really, we're really lucky to have each other. My sister and I have always gotten along very well, and I think you might have met actually. So that's easy, my nephew and stuff. But I think I just hadn't thought about. I was really thinking about work and trying to get into that space, and I think those are real. And I know I'm now talking about failures that are not about work, but I think it's all connected. It's really, really all connected. And I recently started seeing someone who does healing and stuff, and she told me that I was using maybe 30% of my energy, not 100% of my energy. Can you imagine saying that to me?
So the next year, or this year, because we are still there,
We're still in 2020.
should be to connect with that healthy side of life.
Yeah.
Because I feel like what you are saying actually is not because of any aesthetic reason. It's more you feel like you are not 100% your best.
My best.
Right?
And whenever I've done some of the changes that she suggested, it's been really incredible to see how much energy can be created.
Yeah. I think one of the hardest thing to do is to take care of ourselves. We always underestimate the effort that it takes. But it takes that effort because it's worth it. It is worth it at the end of the day.
And also to get that peace, to be able to say, and which I'm now doing, beyond quarantine, I'm going to spend the whole day by myself.
Yes, and the quarantine probably helped with
It's
that.
what really pushed me into it.
So new projects, just because we are getting there.
Close, but wow, we've done it.
New projects apart from all these things you are writing at the moment simultaneously, which is amazing, and I'm jealous.
Do you write?
I do write, but I never write enough. I write short things, and I know one day I will write something longer.
No, but you're writing. And the thing about writing is that you have to, it takes as long as it takes. You have to give it
and give yourself the time.
And also the thing about writing, sorry, I know you're closing soon,
I'll
let you ask your question.
But
the thing about writing I found is that you have to be very good, you have to be nice to yourself. You have to be good to yourself to be a writer.
What do you mean?
I mean that you have to wake up when you're ready to wake up in the day, and you eat what you really feel like eating. So you go, I feel...
To get into the flow
but it's connected.
Yeah.
So, I want some avocado. So you go to the shop. So this is your writing day, right? You go to the shop because you have a feeling for avocado, and you get the avocado and you put it on the plate and you have that. And then you go, oh gosh, I feel like, I don't know, an hour in the bath. You go an hour in the bath and then you feel like a nap. Yeah.
Yes,
And
maybe
at
that's
some-
why I haven't written
That's-
yet.
no, but what I'm
because I
saying is
don't do that.
At some point in all of that, once you've done those little things that
It sounds
seem really
wonderful.
bad,
It sounds the same as everyone says about connecting with your inner voice,
Exactly.
connecting with yourself.
my point is, once you've done all those little things, you suddenly write for an hour, but you write like this.
Yeah.
You write like that. And then the next day, you're not going to want avocado or the bath or the nap. It gets, each day then becomes, so one day you wake up and you open your computer and you just write.
Well, soon I
Yeah.
hope to be able to say I have done what you
will do it.
what you
But this
advised
is
me
beautiful.
to do,
This is
and
really great.
I'm creating something wonderful
Yeah.
and meaningful,
And
not
meaningful.
working for
Not
that
cheap.
job that
Yeah.
doesn't want you.
Yeah.
Good. Oh, Tonderai. He
Thank
has
you.
the name of a superhero.
Oh,
Thank
a sweaty
you.
superhero.
No, please. I want it. Thank
You're
you
beautiful.
so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for your time,
Yeah.
your wise words, and all your good disposition. Thank
Oh, thank you.
you. Thank you, everyone.